I'm Nido the GNTG and welcome to Raging G. A really odd thing in the world of comics is the legacy of one character. Some characters have histories that are older than many of us. For example, Superman is one of the oldest out there. He basically created the superhero genre, but before him there were other heroes like Phantom, Conan and many more. I always feel weird when I think that many of those characters existed before I was even born, and may exist even after my death. Of course, companies have to try many things in order to write good stories, since having a character for so long may make them kinda impossible to create good and original stories for. One of the things that someone may try for a character is to make him being the opposite alignment. For people that aren't familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, I'm saying that you take a good character, make him a villain, and vice versa. In many cases, this gives the potential for a writer to make something new and interesting. The comic that we're going to talk about today features a character that has been through everything, from being a war prisoner to one of the bigger alcoholics in the comic industry, and having his appearance and personality changed from his cinematic counterpart. Of course, I'm talking about Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, in this wasted potential Superior Iron Man. For long-time viewers, Superior Iron Man was my first ever review. It's in Greek though. At the time of my review, this series had a few issues in, and with me being a stupid guy, I decided to talk about this comic in the middle of its run. But unfortunately, this comic ended and my opinion changed after I read it from start to finish. As a small rule that I will put on myself from now on, always talk about a comic after the current arc or its run, if it's a small one, is complete. But let's move to the review. Superior Iron Man began in 2014. The script is from Tom Taylor, a writer that has many comics under his pen, like many Star Wars comics and from Injustice Gods Among Us. Since I'm not going to count the Star Wars comics, because those were under the Dark Horse print, this is the first time Tom Taylor writes for Marvel. It's interesting that he went from a comic that Superman turned evil to a comic where Iron Man turned evil. Also, the script is from Yildiray Cinar, and he worked in many comics in DC like Metal Man, Supergirl, World's Finest, Love is Love. I really want to talk about that comic someday, but not now. And many more. In this comic, as I mentioned, we have a villainous Tony Stark. The reason for this shift in personality comes from the big Marvel event, Axis. To be concise, we have Red Skull, a basic villain of Captain America, that manages and takes the telepathic abilities of Xavier. He died, but he turned into Red Onslaught, and he managed to make a telepathic explosion that affected many characters, making them from good to villains and vice versa. As I stated in my original review, I enjoy that they use so much white in most of the covers and the design of his new suit. It's a really different suit if you compare it to the rest of his, and as Tony Stark says, it's pretty sexy. Even though I really like the design of this new outfit, I love that cover with Tony looking similar to GLaDOS from the Portal games. Absolutely amazing. The first issue of the comic begins with Iron Man giving in San Francisco a small application that makes them all look prettier, more muscle, and generally makes them look like models. We find out from Pepper that he made all of this from extremis, and he created a new social class between the ones that have the app and the ones that don't have it. Here, we get introduced to Daredevil as well, a character that we play a major role, but we'll talk about him in a bit. After that, we see Tony wearing his new symbiote-based armor, making extremis a paying up and making almost everyone a junkie, something that I have to admit is pretty smart. The comic ends with Pepper talking in an old Iron Man suit, and it says that this was all predetermined and it's everything in the plan. But the problems of Superior Iron Man begins almost immediately after that. You can see that they rushed in order to finish it. They were building Daredevil as a major antagonist, making him find out Tony's plan and almost revealing the truth to the public, but they removed him quickly with a pretty pathetic way. Even though I have to say that there were a few moments when Tony used extremis to make him see again as a method to bribe him that were amazing.
And after that, the main enemy is an older version of Tony Stark that he created when he was younger as a precaution. They also had a few more plot lines with Teen Abomination, but again, they wrapped them up quickly. They managed to build his villain in a somewhat good way. There were a few good fights and a few good reveals, especially with Tony Stark that they made him into a pepper-mind buffoon. And yes, that was really silly. But the series ends in a really weird, rushed way and a huge letdown, and nothing was mentioned again.
From the beginning you could see that the creator wanted to make Tony Stark into a huge asshole, and they managed to do that in many cases.
But as I stated before, they ended the series in a pathetic way for him. And after that we had Secret Wars,
and you know how good Secret Wars was.
Where when that was concluded, Iron Man became his normal self again.
Superior Iron Man is one of those comics that you could see that they wasted a lot of potential. Daredevil being a major antagonist was pretty smart, and I never read a story where Daredevil and Tony Stark were antagonists. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, after Secret Wars, Tony Stark returned to being normal Iron Man again, and I don't think that we're going to see Superior Iron Man ever again. I do hope that they bring him back someday, somehow. I know it's Marvel and they're always going to pull something to make people buy more comics, even though I hope they're going to make something good. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, this is an okay comic, it's not amazing, good ideas, but as I mentioned many times, wasted potential. And that was it for this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment as well as to tell me what comic you want me to review next, or manga or webcomic. Please do leave me everything. I'm going to check each of your suggestions and try to make as much possible content that you want. As always, I'm NTG and see ya on the next episode. Peace!